Malawi's Civil Society Education Coalition says that thousands of academically gifted but financially struggling Malawans risk being priced out of public universities. This after institutions in that country announced a 100% increase in tuition fees. They say that the fee hike comes at a time when many families are battling an escalating cost of living, soaring food prices and shrinking household incomes, warning that the decision could deepen educational inequality by making university education a privilege for those who can afford it. To tell us more about their concerns, we joined this evening by Benedict Kondowe, Executive Director and Education Campaigner at the Civil Society Education Coalition in Malawi. A very good evening to you, sir. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business. Welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me to your program.
So I wonder, sir, has this been a long time coming, this sudden escalation of fees, or is it not so sudden?
It is understandable that universities must have predictable increment arrangement. 100% one-off increment at a go at a time that Malawians are battling with a dire economic situation becomes very, very disturbing. It is on the dreams and aspirations of talented yet poor Malawians, because most of them cannot afford. I think it is also becoming very disturbing because the government approved the 2026-2027 national budget by 1st April 2026, which had provided 42 billion towards loans. And that 42 billion was budgeted at 650,000 per student. Yet now, universities have increased by 100%, meaning that the loans board will need to identify ×2 what they had initially been provided by government. So that in itself creates a very dire situation for needy students. Because strictly speaking, where university fees has increased, that will also increase demand for loans. Yet the loans board does not have the capacity to make sure that all deserving students are provided. Now, the question is, what other options are available for these talented yet needy students? But we do understand
and perhaps what we'd like to do, Mr. Benedict, is before we get to the options, which are really important because we need to see, solutions the students have, let's look at the business model of running an institution of this nature. How is government justifying the increase? What have been the line items within the budgeting or within the balance sheet that have actually warranted such an increment?
So the basis for the increment is very simple. In the 2026-2027 financial year, all public universities put together required 536.7 billion Malawi kwacha. What government has provided in the 2026-2027 financial year is only 133.6 billion, which is only 25% of what public investors need. And that is what has triggered public investors to adjust. Unfortunately, when that idea was thrown to government proceeded to endorse the 100% adjustment because government is accepting omission in making sure that the universities are provided with the resources to carry out their day-to-day function. So that has been the context. So what constitutes 100% is basically the support that allows the universities to make sure that all the services that are providing are operational to give effect to effective learning, teaching and learning.
So this is an issue of under budgeting and not an increase that is inflation related.
Not necessarily. It's because government is providing about 20% in the current budget, 20% of what universities needs. So the investors have to look at other options. Unfortunately, other avenues appear not to be sustainable. For instance, the research grants that most investors are involved do not give them more resources because perhaps most investors are not as innovative or as aggressive as one would want. There is only one university that has been earning significant amount of money through research grant, and that is the KUHES is a college of medicine, which in the 2025-2026 they were able to make 50 billion Malawi kwacha. But for most universities, their annual turnover has been ranging from 1.2 billion to around 8 billion. So that shows that universities are not generating more resources through alternative avenues.
So Malawi does have a population of around 21 million people and has one of the continent's youngest populations as well. This is something that you were touching on a bit earlier on today. What are the options available to young people who would no longer be able to access private or public universities and no longer able to afford that? What other options do they have in the market as far as private higher institutions of learning?
Private higher education is already out of the equation. No student that drops out of public universities would find his way in private universities because the fees are much higher than what is obtaining in public universities. And this is why at the beginning I did indicate that the 100% increase is an assault on the dreams and vision of talented yet very poor Malawians because they can't afford private education. So I think it is a very sad story for such talented and poor Malawians because they don't have an alternative way out. I must also admit that even where they drop, there is no opportunity for work because unemployment rate in Malawi is very high. We have so many young graduates who cannot even secure a job 3 years after graduating, some even 5 years after graduating, because job opportunities are very, very low. The other point is that our universities are not promoting hands-on skills, which to a great extent has also contributed to the predicament that the young or the youthful population, as you put it, have in this country.
And what is your reaction then as a civil society that campaigns specifically in the area of education? What has been your response as the Civil Society Education Coalition?
We have issued a statement to highlight the challenges that we are currently discussing to government, but also to university leadership. I must admit that prior to the increment, we had a conversation with the vice chancellors for all the public universities. We did raise our concerns, and those are the issues that we continue to flag in making sure that the government must commit, must make an assurance that they will support all needy students at the current revised university fees. But that if that is not possible, then there must be reconsideration of the adjustment. It must be proportionate to the prevailing economic conditions that Malawians are faced with. And I think this is particularly important because government has introduced multiple taxes that Malawians are already complaining about. And the expectation was that then government will be able to provide resources to cater for public goods and services. Yet here we are, that despite that we are subject to massive taxes, the public universities are increasing by 100%. And some of the public universities, the new academic year will be commencing in September this year. And that does not give parents time, even adequate time to prepare. So all these issues have to be considered by government.
So let's try and put this into perspective now by looking at the kwacha, the dollar or the rand rate. When we're talking about this 100% increase that Malawi universities are going to be instituting, what is that going to equate to? What are the fees now, and what would then be the equivalent in dollars?
So currently, the payable fees are 650,000 Malawi kwacha, and the current exchange rate is $1 is equivalent to.
Oh, it looks like I've lost you there for a moment. It looks like we've lost that connection with Mr. Benedict Kondowe. He's the Executive Director for Education at the Civil Society Education Coalition in Malawi. So he was... Oh, okay, it looks like we do have him back. Mr. Benedict Kondowe, you were just doing the maths for us. You were saying it's around $650. You were $650,000.
No, 650,000 Malawi kwacha.
Kwacha, yes. Which equates to how many dollars?
That is okay. So that one you must divide by 1,751.
All right.
That will give you
it's almost like a 374. It says let's 375, 380. I think a comfortable amount would be 380 US dollars. So that is for the year?
Yes.
All right. And I guess the unaffordability aspects, because of the local economic situation, is what makes this amount completely unaffordable for some sectors of the society.
It is, because 70% of Malawians live on less than $1 per day.
Right. So when you put all of that in context,
70%.
So when you put all of that in context, we were talking a bit earlier on with our colleagues about how this could lead to a fees must fall movement in Malawi, which is what we saw in South Africa, not too long ago, when students were protesting because higher education was simply unaffordable. They were not able to get access to universities because they did not have the funding. What is the situation on the ground? Is that a likely direction for Malawi to follow as well?
As we're talking now, university leadership are already mobilizing themselves. From time to time, I'm receiving calls from student leadership from different public universities who have been meeting since yesterday. Immediately the notice was published, they've been meeting. And surely the direction that they're taking is fees must fall, because they believe that university leadership and government has been quite unfair to many of them. As I said, over 70% of Malawians live on less than $1 per day. And here, you are not just talking about fees. On top of 1.3 million Malawi kwacha, the students have to find their own accommodation, which is another burden. They have to make their own meals, which is an additional burden. So if you put together the economic burden that the students are subjected to are quite severe, and that's why the different public universities are currently holding meetings, strategizing, and surely, from what I'm hearing, engaging with them, fees must fall is likely to emerge.
We'll leave it at that for this evening, Mr. Benedict Kondowe. Certainly a developing story and a very worrying story as well, coming out of Malawi with the high unemployment rate.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. So with the high unemployment in the rate in the country, as well as issues of unaffordability, a 100% increase in university fees, simply unaffordable for many, many families. We'll keep a really close eye on that. He is the Executive Director and Education Campaigner at the Civil Society Education Coalition in Malawi, saying fees must fall may just be loading in that country.